All right, here's like the PPA men's doubles from March 27th. It's like it's charts. I don't know how else is going to show up.
Wow.
So on one side, I've got all the players. The 4 players are over here. It's like third shot drops, third shot drives, winners. It's just a straight up chart. And then over here are all the vertical columns are the games played and how many shots were in each rally.
That's amazing.
It's
I love
wild.
it.
And then I'll go back and I'll record them at home. And then I'll go back a couple of days later and I'll watch them again to try to pull out the extra stats that happen too quick in real time for me to write down. It's like, okay, like who started that speed up and did their team win it or lose it? Things like that.
Have you watched a pro pickleball match on the PPA Tour recently and heard the announcers share some stats from the game in real time? If so, there's a chance those stats were collected by a man named Jim Ramsey. Jim is the first broadcast statistician for the PPA, and he's worked in broadcast for 35 years. I got a chance to talk with Jim and discuss some of the stats that are important to the pro world. We also talk about some of the themes that are emerging and the 5 most surprising stats that he's collected since he started. Be sure to stick around for that one. Also, what do you think? Are stats important to the future of pickleball? Do they affect viewership, or do they affect the recreational level at a strategy perspective? Let me know in the comments. Without further ado, this is my conversation with Jim Ramsey. I'm your host, Adam Richards, and this is High Five Pickleball. Let's get into it. Jim Ramsey, thank you so much for joining the podcast today. I'm so excited about this. I'm not a numbers person, but I am really excited about what this means for the future of pickleball. I'm excited about what you're doing. But first, Jim Ramsey, can you please just introduce yourself and tell me a little bit about your background?
Yeah, thank you very much. It's really great to be here. I've been playing pickleball for 5 years. I just retired last year from a 35-year career in television sports. So I am used to looking at television sports broadcasts from like a critical professional viewpoint, not just from the fan viewpoint. And television, of course, comes with strict deadlines. So that's something that's translating very well into what I'm doing now. I grew up loving baseball and basketball, which are 2 sports really embedded with statistics. So it all has come together now with a TV background. You sprinkle it all together, and I'm on the front wave of the pickleball statistics wave, and it's great.
Yeah, you are. So 25 years on the TV side. Did I hear that correctly?
35 actually. I'm
35.
60 now.
Wow. Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, that's interesting in itself. So what were you doing in that time?
Well, my first couple of jobs were at the local level. I was at a TV station in Dallas, Texas, started in news, jumped over to sports, and I was helping the sportscasters put together their sports segment that runs in the newscasts. That also includes Sunday nights when they do the expanded show. That can be as long as 20 minutes, wrapping up everything that's going on. So I did that in Dallas and then Sacramento. And then for the last 25 years, pretty close, I was at an NBC national office that happens to be in Charlotte, North Carolina. Their affiliate feed service, the other networks have the same thing. And what that does is it helps all of the NBC stations around the country get their video. So an example like to use, say there's like a big forest fire out west. You can't have 300 stations all calling the San Francisco affiliate asking for video because they're too busy covering it to help all those stations. So they'll feed it to us, and we'll be the middleman. We'll edit down the best video that goes with it, and then put it back out on the computer to all the stations. So whether it's national news like that, whatever the president happens to be doing, it's like a big video buffet that we lay out where the local newscaster, the local news producer, when he's putting together the show, It needs some national stories for the middle. That's how they're getting it. So I was working in sports. So I had the great position of, say, in the summertime, I'd be working on schedules and different things in the afternoon. And then in the evening, I'm watching 2 or 3 baseball games all at the same time.
Wow.
So I used to tell people, yeah, I work nights, but I'm watching sports for TV.
And so were you doing statistics at that point?
Not so much specifically, but I had to be extremely accurate with what I was writing. Because what I put on the script, the shot sheet that goes with the highlights that we're putting out to all the stations, I can't say LeBron James scored 49 points when he scored 29, because a local person might take that to the air, and then that's bad information that's going out. So it's very important to be accurate in what I was doing. Gotcha.
Yeah, that's so interesting how all of that has now culminated to this point to where we are with pickleball. I've learned a little bit about you. It sounds like you started playing pickleball 5 years ago. Is that correct?
Yeah, about 5 years ago, I was at the local YMCA just shooting baskets on one half of the court, and there was a big partition, and I heard the bouncing and hitting going on, and they would announce their score in 3 numbers. So I know lots of different sports, and I couldn't figure out what the 3-number deal was. So I poked my head around the corner, and some ladies were having a really good time playing. My wife played high school tennis. So when we had an opportunity for a beginner's clinic, we jumped in on it. And now we're playing probably 3 or 4 days a week. Actually, I played this morning already.
Wow, that's awesome. Living the life.
It's great.
I love it. So at some point along the way, you got involved with PPA.
Right.
Can you tell me that story?
This is your classic right place at the right time thing. Because I retired last September, I had some extra time on my hands. And when I'd be watching pickleball on television, for instance, I think as recently as 2019, the only way I'd really see it was CBS Sportsnet had the US Open. It was from April, and they tape delayed and showed in May. And we keep that in our DVR and watch that almost all year round. And then I noticed that there weren't many statistics used in the broadcast. Well, any one of us, if we're watching football or basketball or baseball, it's just flooded with stats all the time. It's just ingrained into the broadcast. Pickleball didn't really have that. I'd be watching a match and I'd say, how many shots was in that rally? That was a really long rally. And we never know. Or like, how long is an average rally? As a recreational player, people talk about third shot drops and third shot drives. So what percentages are the pros hitting? And does that change from match to match? So I just hopped into my DVR and I'd record some matches. And then I just started some basic rudimentary stats just to sort of for myself to see what was working, what was going on. And I did a write-up on one and put it out on Facebook in a couple groups that had large followings, and got some really good feedback from that. One of them was from a man who's on the USA Pickleball Board of Directors. And he said, if you start your own group, I would jump in. And that caught my attention. So I started a Facebook group, Pro Pickleball Stats, and it exploded the first week it was open in February. And within a couple of days, I got contacted by the PPA, the number one TV guy, and another person named Connor Pardo decided to contact me. That's the PPA commissioner.
Right.
That got my attention. So he looped me back around to Ray Koliakovo, the number one TV guy, that he wanted me to work with him on stats. And then when Ray found out I had this big TV background already, so it was a really no learning curve for what's going on in the truck, what's going on in the production. I did a couple of tournaments just like on a trial basis. Everything worked out great. So now when PPA Sundays roll around, I've got my charts ready and I'm the stat guy.
Wow. And it sounds like you're doing it all manually, right? Or is it all paper and pen? And
it's old school, totally paper and pen, big chart right in my lap, two open face notebook. I got my Sharpies. I got columns, and I'm filling it up.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean that's how it should be. It's I think that's pickleball in essence right there. But it gives it room to grow, and it's the opportunity. We got to start somewhere. And so you started that Facebook group, and I think you started that in February. Is that right?
February is when it really jumped. Yeah.
And now you're at over 1,000 members.
Right.
That's awesome.
There's some name brand pros in our group. I get some Facebook messages with some household names talking about different stats. Some of the things that we're talking about are more from the scouting perspective on what a player might be looking at, which is a different kind of set of numbers than a broadcast stat, or just what the general fan might be interested in.
That's interesting.
It's been a ride. It's been really great.
So are there any themes within what the pros or some of the household names, what they're looking for?
Well, some of the things that they're looking for are more technical as to what you would want in a scouting purpose. Like a certain player, when does he speed up a shot? And what body part is he targeting on? I mean, that's interesting, but for a viewer at home, it's a little bit too narrow. But there are some themes that I've noticed already in just my couple months of doing this. Is one, as to be expected, the pros are really good. I keep track of a couple of things, like I look for mistakes on either the serve, the return, or the third shot. Where at the pro level, if they're making a mistake on one of those three shots, it's usually just a concentration thing. Not that they're challenged at any great level. And then the same is like a dink into a net. We might see that in a rec game fairly frequently. The pros very rarely will mishit a dink into the net. So those two categories together, that only counts to about 10 to 15% of all the rallies at the pro level.
Wow. 10 or 15%.
That's all. The missing one of the first three shots or dink into the net only happens like one time out of every 10 rallies at the pro level. Drops and drives, which I just mentioned a little while ago. A lot of the viewers at home, a lot of the recreational players wonder how much they should be dropping versus driving. And I think one of the great things about what I'm starting to do with stats, it's being a bridge from perception to reality. You can watch a match and get a feel for how much a pro is hitting third shot drops. But now when we can bring the actual numbers and tell you that it's 62% or it's 42 drops to 21 drives, that's bringing clarity and specificity to it, which I think is an important play. Then the other theme I've noticed a lot is just the length of the rallies and the pace of play. You might have a rally that goes, in an average pro match, you might have one that goes, say, 14, average shot might be 14 shots. So once you get serve, return, third shot drop, and it settles down, you have a little ways to go now until you really get to the end of the rally.
Especially in those mixed doubles games, right? I mean, those rallies tend to go a while, and then it hits kind of this moment where I think somebody may speed it up, right? And I again, people go follow this Facebook group, because this is how I know this is following the Facebook group. It kind of turns this moment where somebody speeds it up, and then it could go a few different directions. Is that how you're seeing it play out?
That happens quite a bit. We also keep track at this Facebook group, Pro Pickleball Stats, of these speed ups that lead directly to the end of the rally, where who's speeding it up, who's the first person to speed it up, and then does their team win that hand battle. So that indicates a lot who's very successful about choosing their spots, and which teams are maybe more reserved and which teams are maybe more aggressive.
And so do you feel like these stats can, or are they influencing pickleball strategy at the pro level?
I think they go hand in hand with it. Like, I'll give you a recent example. When the PPA was in Austin just a couple of weeks ago, March 27th, Riley Newman and Matt Wright were playing against the Johns brothers. When Riley and Matt would serve, then the Johnses would return.
I think I saw this one.
59 times Riley hit the third shot, and only 3 times did it go to Matt. Riley was nice enough to message me back just today, actually, because I asked him about this. And he said, yeah, when we play the Johnses, they like to return their serve to me, because if they can pin me back at the baseline, then I can't go roaming around and being aggressive and maybe poaching on that fifth shot. That's just the strategy of it. So when you're watching the match, you see these things happen, and to know the actual numbers that are going with it reinforces what you're looking at.
Right.
So the way you ask the question, it's like the stat and the strategy all go together to make the complete package.
And so at some point, though, this will have to converge at the recreational level, right? Where people will, I think it will influence that strategy where people have to understand that, okay, if we're going to win this, maybe we should think about keeping the more aggressive person, or the one who is poaching. Let's keep them all the way back at all cost, and
Right.
with all of our returns. And so I think at that point it elevates the game, and at least that's how I'm seeing it.
I think it's going to, especially when we're teaching new players how to play, because it's so much easier to hit a third shot drive than it is to learn how to hit a third shot drop.
Right.
But when an instructor can say, that match last weekend, if you watched Leigh and Leigh, they hit 3/4 of the time they're hitting third shot drops. So if you want to get to that level, you really need to learn the third shot drop. So when instructors can telling their new students specific numbers to go with the general instruction, I think that's going to be a big plus.
Right. And so we're talking about stats at the pro level.
Right.
And I mean, you haven't been doing this for very long, but you've already mentioned a few themes that you're seeing with speed ups, with longer rallies. Are there any other themes that you're seeing or that are emerging?
One thing I saw, it's more or less specific to the particular players. Well, like the Johns brothers playing against Matt Wright and Riley Newman. They've both been it's been the gold medal matchup on the PPA tour, once in February, and once then in March in Arizona and then in Austin. And when I was looking at these two matches, the longer the rallies went, the more the scale tipped toward the Johns winning the rally. In the first match in February, the Johns won 12 of the 19 longest rallies.
Wow.
And then in March, they won 11 out of the 18 longest rallies. So that's about 62% overall. So, that's a team that's very confident that when the longer it goes, they've got the mental discipline to hang in there, and they know that either they're going to pull through or the other team might make a mistake.
That's so interesting. And I think those numbers, quantifying it, makes it more real, at least in my perspective. And it gives it more context to what's actually happening at the pro level and kind of the bleeding edge of strategy, because they are the ones who are leading the way with strategy. And I keep going back to that story about the tournament, and they're keeping Riley back. And I imagine you there, you're kind of writing it all out. You're seeing it in real time. What was going through your mind I imagine you're seeing this theme kind of emerge. What were you thinking?
Well, we did see it emerge. And then I think after the second game, during the timeout between games, I was able to quickly look at the numbers and then relay to the truck to say, hey, so far Riley has hit like 41 third shots and Matt's hit 2, something like that. So we did have a stat while the game was going on. So our announcers could address it and say, oh, by the way, in case you noticed, Riley's hitting a lot of thirds. It's absolutely true. And here's the numbers that went with it. That matched it up. We were talking about how this goes to the recreational level. In this particular case, say you're playing against a better player and a weaker player. So a lot of times you might say, well, it's easy, just return it to the weaker player. But then if the weaker player hits a decent third shot, Now the better player is going to go zooming up there and cause a lot of pressure right away.
Right.
So, okay, so that means you want to hit your return to the stronger player to pin him back.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
just another way to look at it. And it's when we get statistics like this to illuminate what's going on, I think it's only good for the sport, not only that match, but just all across levels.
Yeah, and I think it adds another layer to the game where some people may say that pickleball is not a spectator sport, but I see this adding a new dynamic to the sport to where maybe it could influence the commercial side. I think it could influence the viewership side. Are you seeing any of that or thinking through any of that as you're taking on stats in pickleball?
Um, that's a little bit beyond the level of how I'm involved, but I think by adding statistics to the broadcasts, and I'm happy to be on the first wave of people who are doing that. It's going to take it's the first step in many steps that our commissioner Connor Pardo wants to take to increase the professionalism of the sport in as many areas as he can. So I think this is just one of those many steps in that direction.
So, just to kind of wrap it all up, I'm interested in maybe a few of the stats that have surprised you so far. Do you have maybe a top list of stats to share?
I've got some good ones, and I think some of our viewers and fans are going to be amazed if they didn't know these already.
Yeah, let's hear it.
Okay, I've got about five. PPA Arizona, a little while ago, men's singles. Ben John's #1 player in the world. He lost the second game to Tyson McGuffin 11-0. A pickle. Okay? But Ben has those mental skills to like set that aside, and then he still won the match.
Wow.
So
And that's only one so far. You got four
He
more.
won the first game, lost the second game 11-0, which would cause a lot of people to crater. And Ben just flipped the script and won the next two games, won the match.
Wow.
That's a wild
That's
one.
interesting.
Okay. PPA National Indoor Championships in Minnesota a few weeks back. Callie Smith and Lucy Kovalova were playing against Leigh Waters and Annalee Waters. And Callie and Lucy decided it seemed like they were saying, let's make Leigh Waters beat us and not let Annalee run wild. Because Leigh hit 86 third shots and Annalee hit 2.
Wow. Only 2.
2. So they said, let's pin Leigh back and make her work really hard and see what happens.
Wow. Talk about strategy. I mean, it's a glaring right there just in the numbers.
Yeah, so that was they stuck to the strategy. That was pretty amazing. Also amazing, Ben's brother Colin Johns doesn't always get the credit he deserves because this guy is a fantastic player. Recreational players, get ready to pick up your jaw off the floor. Last 3 matches I've seen him play, that covers 10 games. You know how many dinks he's hit into the net? 1.
10 games.
10 games, the highest level, 1 dink into the net.
You're talking about hundreds of shots, potentially 1,000 in 10 games. Does it reach that level?
Well, a game might have anywhere between 1,500 and 2,000 shots in the whole match. So that's maybe 5,000 to 7,000 shots between the two teams. So he might have, of those 7,000, he might have hit 4 players. Maybe he's hit 1,000 or 2,000 of them. And there's serves and returns and volleys and overheads. I get that. But still, at a lot of times, they've got their toes on the line. They're dinking back and forth for gold medals. And he's only messed up by dinking to the net 1 time in 10 games.
Wow.
A lot of us can't go 10 minutes down at the park without hitting a dink into the net.
Right. That is really mind blowing. Wow.
That is great. 2022 men's doubles, the national championships from Indian Wells back in December. J.W. Johnson and Callan Dawson hit 28 third shot drops and 0 third shot drives.
Okay, wow.
They were totally committed to dropping and dinking.
And so, real quick, who were they playing against?
They were playing against Riley Newman and Tyson McGuffin.
Okay.
And Riley and Tyson basically said, we think we can outdink these guys. And this match had an average of 21 shots per rally.
Wow.
Every time the ball was put in play with a serve, around 20, 21 shots later, it took until the end of the rally. And this match hit the high water mark of 81 shots 2 times.
Wow.
So this was a real old school drop and dink, grind it out at the kitchen kind of match.
Wow. That is, I got to go back and watch that now.
That was a good one. And then my last one, hang on. My last one is about, there's so many positives that we can all say about Anna Leigh Waters. She is an amazing talent. She's got super composure, just a wonderful person, wonderful player from everything that we've seen. And what's scary to me about the way she's playing this year is her versatility. Anna Leigh and her mother sort of came up with a reputation of banging, ripping, just hitting third shot drives, being aggressive. Well, they won the women's doubles at the Nationals last December, playing mostly that kind of style. Anna Leigh in that match hit 14 third shot drives and only 3 third shot drops.
Okay.
Kind of fits the way she likes to play with her mom. Jump ahead only 1 month later to January 2022. She's playing mixed doubles now with Ben Johns. And she's going to play differently with Ben than she's going to play with her mom. In that match, the gold medal match that they won, she hit 26 third shot drops and only 7 third shot drives. So wow. She flipped the script around based on who she was playing with to mesh her style with her partner to be the most effective team that she could participate and help become. And that kind of versatility is very, very impressive, especially coming from a 15-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, when you put it in that perspective, it shows how quickly she has evolved and changed, and how she literally is the future of the sport, and it's exciting to see where it could go from here.
Absolutely. That's a very impressive thing, what she's doing.
Well, Jim, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all you're doing for stats and pickleball. And thank you again, just for running that Facebook group. I'm going to keep watching it. I'm going to keep learning, and I hope we can do this again sometime.
I hope so. And please come out and see us on the Facebook group, Pro Pickleball Stats. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jim.